In 43 years commanding the War Academy of Thuros Prime, I've seen recruits die in conditions less brutal than day one. So explain to me, how did the human girl not only survive, but make my strongest warriors look weak? I have seen 347 species attempt to survive the War Academy of Thuros Prime. 347. Do you know how many graduated? 62. The rest either quit, got themselves medically discharged, or worse, much worse. So when I received the transmission that a human was being assigned to my facility, I did what any reasonable commanding officer would do. I laughed hard. The thing about humans is that they are soft. Not just physically soft, though their lack of exoskeleton certainly does not help their case, but soft in every way that matters in a war zone. Their homeworld, Earth, sits in what the Galactic Council generously calls a Class 3 environment. Class 3. That is one step above a leisure colony. No acidic atmosphere, no gravitational anomalies, no predators worth mentioning unless you count their own species, which honestly I do not. They have weather, sure, but compared to the plasma storms of Kethrix or the ice volcanoes of Mordoon, Earth's little rain showers are about as threatening as a gentle sneeze. The training ground spread out before me like a beautiful nightmare. 50 square kilometers of the most hostile, unforgiving terrain we could engineer. The gravity plating alone could be adjusted to crush a Vrelinian, and Vrelinians evolved on a planet with 4 times standard gravity. The obstacle courses were designed by sadists, approved by masochists, and maintained by individuals who genuinely enjoyed watching recruits cry. And they did cry. All of them. Eventually, my second-in-command, Thorol, a hulking Grensock with arm plates thick enough to deflect plasma rounds, approached my observation platform with his usual heavy footfalls. Each step sounded like a small artillery blast. That is how you know someone is built for combat. When they walk, the ground notices. "General Krevath," he rumbled, his voice like rocks grinding together in a landslide, "the human has arrived. Already." I checked my chronometer. The transport was not scheduled to dock for another 15 minutes. Apparently, the human insisted on early deployment, said something about wanting to, and I quote, "get this party started." Thorol's facial ridges contorted in what might have been confusion. "I do not understand. There is no party scheduled." I checked the facility calendar twice. I allowed myself a small smile. Human idioms. Charming in their naivety. It is a figure of speech, Thorol. Humans use them excessively. Where is she now? Processing. She should be arriving at the main courtyard in approximately 4 minutes. Thorol paused, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "General, if I may speak freely." "You may. Why did Command approve this? A human? Here," he gestured at the training ground below, where a group of Carthenian recruits were currently attempting to cross a chasm while automated turrets fired stun rounds at them. One of the Carthenians, a male with particularly impressive bioluminescent markings, took a hit to the thorax and plummeted into the safety netting below, unconscious before he even landed. Humans are not built for this kind of intensity. Their bone density is laughable. Their muscle fiber composition is inefficient. They do not even have a proper threat display. No horns, no venom sacs, no chromatic intimidation patterns, nothing. Command has its reasons, I said, though privately I agreed with every word. Something about expanding recruitment opportunities and demonstrating the inclusive nature of the Galactic Defense Initiative. Politics, Thorol, always politics. How long do you think she will last? I considered this carefully. The average recruit dropout rate in the first week was 38%. For species from low-intensity worlds, that number jumped to 71%. Generously, 3 days. Realistically, she will be requesting a transfer before the orientation is complete. Should we prepare the medical bay? Always, though I doubt she will sustain any injuries worth treating. She will quit long before it comes to that. I pulled up the personnel file on my datapad. Lieutenant Kira Torres, 28 standard years old. Served in Earth's military, though what they call military service is closer to what we would consider civilian peacekeeping. Commendations for, let me see, tactical analysis and small unit leadership. No combat experience against anything more dangerous than other humans. Thorol made a huffing sound that indicated deep skepticism. Humans fighting humans. That must be like watching larvae battle over a food pellet. An apt comparison. I zoomed in on the service photograph. The human stared back at me with dark eyes that held what I supposed was meant to be determination. Cute. She had the typical human features, bilaterally symmetrical face, ridiculous amount of hair on her head but nowhere else useful, skin tone somewhere between pale cream and light brown. Nothing about her screamed warrior. Everything about her screamed fragile. Well, we shall see soon enough. Activate the courtyard monitors. I want to observe her reaction when she gets her first real look at what awaits her. The screens flickered to life, showing multiple angles of the main courtyard. It was not designed to be welcoming. Quite the opposite, actually. The walls were lined with weapons from every major conflict in the last 2 centuries. The floor was scarred with blast marks that we intentionally never repaired. The temperature was kept exactly at the threshold of discomfort for most species, and in the center, proudly displayed, was a memorial wall listing every recruit who had died during training in the past 50 years. There were 163 names on that wall. I had memorized every single one. It was my job to make sure their sacrifice meant something, to ensure that only the strongest, the most capable, the most absolutely lethal individuals graduated from my facility. I did not run a school, I ran a crucible, and this human was about to be thrown into the fire. Movement at the north entrance, Thorell announced. I leaned forward, watching as the door slid open. This was always my favorite part. The moment when new recruits got their first glimpse of the arena, as everyone called it, and realized that they had made a terrible mistake. The fear in their eyes, the hesitation in their step, the way their bodies instinctively prepared to flee. It was honest, it was real, and it told me everything I needed to know about who would make it and who would not. The human stepped through the doorway. She was smaller than I expected, barely reaching standard height, wearing the standard issue training uniform that somehow managed to look even less impressive on her compact frame. She carried a single duffel bag over one shoulder. Her face was calm, too calm. She stopped in the center of the courtyard, directly beneath the memorial wall, her head tilted back, reading the names. I watched her lips move silently as she counted them. Then, and this is the part that should have warned me, this is the moment I should have paid closer attention to, she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a scared smile. A smile like she had just been told a private joke and was deciding whether to share the punchline. Interesting, I muttered. General, Thorell looked at me questioningly. Nothing. Have her report to Orientation Room 7. Let us see if that smile survives the first briefing. But as I watched Lieutenant Kira Torres shoulder her bag and walk with absolute confidence toward the training wing, something nagged at the back of my military mind. Something that whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, I had miscalculated. I dismissed the thought immediately. She was human. Soft, weak, utterly unprepared for what was coming. 3 days, maximum. The smile would not last. How spectacularly wrong I was. I decided to handle the orientation personally. Normally I would delegate this task to one of my training officers, but something about the way that human had smiled in the courtyard irritated me. Like a small stone lodged in my boot, it was not painful, just persistently annoying. I wanted to see that confidence crumble up close. Call it a character flaw, but after 200 years of military service, you learn to enjoy the small pleasures. Orientation Room 7 was designed with a specific purpose in mind. Intimidation. The ceiling stretched 4 times standard height, making anyone standing at ground level feel insignificant. The walls displayed a continuous loop of training footage, specifically the moments where recruits failed spectacularly. Broken bones, unconscious bodies being dragged from combat zones, the occasional dramatic rescue when someone nearly died from their own stupidity. We set the room temperature to cold, just cold enough to be uncomfortable, and the lighting had a harsh quality that made everyone look slightly ill. When I entered, the human was already there. She stood at attention, hands clasped behind her back, posture rigid. Military discipline, at least she had that much. 6 other recruits were positioned around the room, each maintaining careful distance from the others. A Zelthorian female with bioluminescent scales that flickered nervously. 2 Korthan males, brothers by the matching clan markings on their foreheads, both built like mobile fortifications. A Vrexian who was quite possibly the largest specimen of his species I had ever seen, easily 3 meters tall with arms spanned to match. a Peltharan female whose optical enhancements suggested she was a scout specialist, and one Hendari male whose chitinous plating gleamed under the harsh lights. All of them stared at the human with varying expressions of disbelief. "Attention," I barked, and they all snapped to proper stance. Well, all except the human, who was already there. "I am General Krevath, commander of this facility. For the next 16 weeks, your life belongs to me. Your pain belongs to me. Your suffering, your exhaustion, your regret about every life choice that brought you to this moment, all of it belongs to me." I paced in front of them, letting my words sink in. "Some of you will quit, most of you, statistically speaking, some of you will be injured. A few of you might die. We have excellent medical facilities, but accidents happen when you are training for actual war. This is not a simulation, this is not a game. This is the most brutal military training program in the Galactic Defense Initiative, and you volunteered for it. Remember that when you are crying in your bunks at night." The Zelthorian's scales flickered faster. The Hendari's antenna drooped slightly. "Good." Fear was healthy. Fear kept you alert. I stopped directly in front of the human. Up close, she was even less impressive. No natural armor, no visible weapons, just soft flesh and those unnervingly calm eyes. "Lieutenant Torres. Is it?" "Yes, General." Her voice was steady, with a slight accent that marked her as coming from Earth's western hemisphere. "Tell me, Lieutenant, what possessed you to request assignment to Thuros Prime? Surely you know what this place is. What we do here." "I do, General. And yet you came anyway." I leaned down, bringing my face level with hers. At full height, I stood nearly 2.5 meters tall. My species evolved as apex predators on a world where everything wanted to kill you. My teeth were designed to tear through armored hide. My bone structure could withstand impacts that would liquefy softer species. I was built for war in ways she could never comprehend. "Humans do not last here, Lieutenant. Your species is not designed for this kind of intensity. You lack the physical resilience, the aggressive instincts, the biological advantages that actual warrior races possess. So let me ask you again. Why are you here?" She met my gaze without flinching. The corner of her mouth twitched upward, just slightly. "Then why am I still standing, General?" The room went silent. Even the training footage seemed to pause, though I know that was just my imagination. The other recruits looked at her like she had just insulted a deity, which in a sense, she had. I felt my jaw plates tighten. "Excuse me. You said humans do not last here, but I am here, standing, in front of you. Still very much present and accounted for." Her tone was respectful, but there was something underneath it. Amusement, maybe? Or challenge. "So either your statement is incorrect, or your definition of lasting needs adjustment, sir." Thorol, who had been standing by the door, made a choking sound. The Korthan brothers exchanged glances that clearly communicated they thought the human had a death wish. The Vrexian's eyes widened to the point where I thought they might fall out of his head. I straightened to my full height, considering my options. I could crush this insubordination immediately, make an example of her, send her running back to Earth with her tail between her legs. Except humans do not have tails, which is just another design flaw in my opinion. Or, and this option intrigued me more, I could let her continue, let her think she had scored some kind of victory with her clever words. Let her walk into the training ground with that unearned confidence intact. The fall would be so much more satisfying. "Still standing," I repeated slowly. "How delightfully semantic of you, Lieutenant. Yes, you are currently vertical. Congratulations. That is the absolute minimum requirement for being alive." I turned to address the full group. "Since Lieutenant Torres here is so confident in her species' capabilities, perhaps we should discuss exactly why the Galactic Council classifies Earth as a low-threat environment." I activated the holographic display in the center of the room. A rotating model of Earth appeared, blue and green and utterly peaceful. "This is Earth. Average gravity, 1.0 standard. No extreme temperature variations outside of polar regions. Atmosphere composition, breathable without enhancement for most carbon-based species. Largest predators already driven to near extinction by human activity. Primary threats to human survival, other humans and occasionally weather." I gestured dismissively at the serene planet. "The Council has documented over 47,000 worlds. Earth ranks in the bottom third for environmental hostility. It is, by any objective measure, a safe planet. Easy. Comfortable. The Zalthorian spoke up, her voice tentative. General, if I may ask, why would someone from such a world seek military training? An excellent question, Recruit Velthus. I glanced at the human, whose expression had not changed. Still calm. Still amused. Humans are known throughout the galaxy for their curiosity, their tendency to overestimate their capabilities, and their remarkable ability to ignore obvious danger. They are explorers, diplomats, scientists. They are very good at talking. They are less good at fighting. We do all right, Kira said quietly. Against what? Other humans. I laughed, and it came out harsher than I intended. Your species has been part of the galactic community for barely 30 years. You have never faced a Krenthok warpack. You have never held a position against a Dravian assault wave. You have never experienced real combat against enemies that evolved specifically to kill. One of the Korthan brothers, the one with a scar across his forehead, grunted in agreement. Humans are soft. Everyone knows this. No offense intended, but facts are facts. None taken, Kira replied cheerfully. Facts are indeed facts. Here is another fact. I am here. You are here. We are all starting from the same position. So how about we let the training decide who is soft and who is not, instead of making assumptions based on which planet someone happened to be born on? The audacity of this creature. I almost admired it. Almost. Very well, Lieutenant Toraz. I will make you a deal. Survive the first week without requesting a transfer or medical discharge, and I will personally apologize for underestimating you. Does that sound fair? More than fair, General. She smiled again, and it was that same private joke smile from the courtyard. Though I should warn you, I am very good at collecting apologies. The Rexian made a sound halfway between a laugh and a cough. The Peltherin scout tilted her head, optical enhancements whirring as she analyzed the human with new interest. Even Thorol looked intrigued, his usual stoic expression cracking just slightly. We shall see, I said, though something in my gut twisted with a feeling I could not quite identify. Doubt? No. Impossible. She was human. Weak, fragile, overconfident. 3 days, maybe 4 if she was stubborn. Dismissed. Report to the equipment bay for gear assignment, then to your barracks. Training begins at dawn. I suggest you get what sleep you can. It will be the last comfortable night you experience for a very long time. They filed out, the other recruits giving the human a wide berth. All except the Vrexian, who paused next to her. That was either very brave or very stupid, he rumbled. Why not both? Kira replied, and I heard her laugh as they exited. Thorol approached me, his expression troubled. General, was it wise to challenge her directly? If she does succeed, even partially, it could undermine the perception of human weakness. She will not succeed, Thorol. Trust me. I have seen this before. Overconfident recruits who think their determination matters more than their biology. They always break. Always. I deactivated the holographic display, watching Earth disappear. Besides, when she fails, it will reinforce exactly why humans do not belong in combat roles. Better to prove it now than waste resources training someone fundamentally unsuited for war. But as I left the orientation room, I could not shake the image of that smile. That infuriating, knowing, absolutely certain smile. 3 days, I told myself. Maximum. I really should have known better. Dawn on Thuros Prime is not a gentle thing. The planet's twin suns rise simultaneously, turning the sky a violent shade of orange-red that looks like the universe is bleeding. I have always found it appropriately dramatic for what we put recruits through on their first full day. The wake-up alarm sounds at 0500 hours, a frequency specifically calibrated to be unpleasant for most species' auditory systems. It is not just a sound, it is an I positioned myself on the observation deck overlooking the main training yard, datapad in hand, ready to document the inevitable failures. Thorol joined me with 2 cups of Kethrol, our traditional morning stimulant that could probably strip paint if we let it sit long enough. The human was first out of the barracks, he reported, his tone neutral but his eyes questioning. First, I took the cup, letting the heat warm my palms. Before the Korthan brothers, 17 minutes before, she was running perimeter laps when I arrived to open the facility. I frowned. Early rising meant nothing. Enthusiasm was common on day 1. It was day 3, day 5, day 7 when you saw who actually had the spine to continue. probably could not sleep. Anxiety does that to weaker species. Perhaps, Thorol said, but he did not sound convinced. The recruits assembled in formation on the yard below, 7 of them standing at attention while Training Officer Graf, a Mendorian with a voice that could shatter glass, delivered the morning briefing. I could not hear the specific words from this distance, but I knew the speech by heart. Pain, suffering, glory, honor. Do not die stupidly. The usual. Today's exercise is the gravity gauntlet, I said, pulling up the specifications on my datapad. Standard procedure. We start at 1.2 standard gravity and increase by 0.2 increments every 5 minutes. Full combat drills, obstacle navigation and hand-to-hand sparring. Most recruits start struggling around 1.6. The human will be lucky to make it past 1.4. The gravity gauntlet was beautifully simple in its brutality. The entire training yard sat on adjustable gravity plating, allowing us to simulate combat conditions on high-gravity worlds. Every movement became harder, every breath more labored, every muscle screaming against the increased weight. I had seen Vrexians, massive and powerful, reduced to crawling by the time we hit 2.0 gravity. A human, with their inefficient muscle composition and lightweight skeletal structure, this was going to be educational for everyone involved. Graf activated the gravity plating. I watched the readouts climb. 1.2. The recruits began their warm-up exercises, basic combat forms that any competent fighter should know instinctively. The Corthan brothers moved like machines, perfectly synchronized. The Vrexian was slower but powerful, each strike carrying devastating force. The Zelthorian struggled immediately, her species not built for heavy gravity environments, but she persisted with admirable determination. And the human moved like nothing had changed. Increased to 1.4, I ordered through the communication system. The change was immediate and visible. The Peltharan scout's movements became more deliberate, conserving energy. The Hendari's antenna drooped further, his chitinous armor suddenly feeling like a liability. The Zelthorian dropped to one knee, gasping, before forcing herself back up. This was normal. This was expected. Kira continued her combat forms without missing a beat. Is the plating malfunctioning? I asked, checking the readings again. No, General. Operating at full capacity. Gravity field is uniform across the entire yard. Thorol zoomed in on the human with the observation camera. She is definitely experiencing the increased gravity. Look at her posture, the way she is distributing her weight. She knows it is there. She is just compensating for it. Compensating. I said the word like it tasted bad. How? I do not know. 1.6 gravity. Now we would see the truth. At this level, even species from moderate gravity worlds started showing serious fatigue. The Corthan brothers were sweating, their movements still precise but noticeably slower. The Vrexian had switched to a defensive stance, his massive frame working against him now. The Hendari was on his hands and knees, trying desperately to stand. Kira was sparring with one of the training automatons, a mechanical opponent programmed to adapt to its user's skill level. She ducked under a strike, pivoted, drove her elbow into the machine's sensor array, and swept its legs. The automaton crashed to the ground with a satisfying thud, under 1.6 gravity, where every movement should have felt like wading through mud. This is impossible, I muttered. Clearly not, General. I shot Thorol a look that could have melted steel. 1.8. Now, 1.8 was where we separated the truly elite from everyone else. At this gravity level, you were carrying almost twice your normal body weight. Your heart had to work twice as hard to pump blood. Your lungs burned with every breath. Your bones creaked under the strain. I had personally experienced 1.8 exactly once, during my own advanced training, and I had hated every second of it. The Zelthorian collapsed completely, her body simply unable to continue. Medical drones swept in to extract her. No shame in that, her species was never meant for this. The Peltharan was down to a crawl, moving with painful slowness toward the next objective marker. The Hendari was unconscious, his body's defensive systems shutting down to prevent permanent damage. Even the Corthan brothers, proud warriors from a harsh world, were struggling to maintain basic stances. The Vrexian was still standing, barely, his massive legs shaking with effort but his eyes still focused. Respect. That one had earned it. And Kira? Kira was helping the Peltharan scout reach the objective marker. Under 1.8 gravity, where she should have been crushed into the ground, the human was providing support to another recruit. "What is she made of?" Thorol asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Flesh and bone, supposedly." I pulled up Earth's biological specifications again, reading them for the third time, searching for something I had missed. Standard carbon-based life form, endoskeleton, bilateral symmetry, mammalian classification. There is nothing here that suggests this level of performance. On the screen, Kira got the Peltharan to the marker, then turned back to start her own obstacle course. The course consisted of walls to climb, barriers to vault, trenches to cross, all while carrying a 30-kilogram equipment pack. Under normal gravity, it was challenging. Under 1.8, it was borderline sadistic. She attacked it like she had a personal grudge against physics itself. My irritation was evolving into something more complex. Confusion, certainly. Disbelief, absolutely. But underneath that, something I had not felt in years. Curiosity. How was this possible? What was I missing? "Check her medical scans from intake processing," I ordered. "Full genetic workup. I want to know if she is enhanced, augmented, or somehow not actually human." Thorol pulled up the records, scanning through them with practiced efficiency. Medical scan shows completely baseline human physiology. No augmentations, no genetic modifications, no performance-enhancing implants. She is, by every measurable standard, exactly as human as they come. That makes no sense whatsoever. Agreed. I watched as Kira cleared the final obstacle, a 3-meter wall that required pulling your entire body weight plus gear straight up. Her arms were shaking. I could see that even from here, but she made it over. She dropped to the other side, landing in a combat roll that absorbed the impact, then stood up and jogged back to the starting position. She was grinning. Grinning. Like this was fun. 2.0, I said, my voice flat. Thorol turned to look at me. "General, 2.0 gravity could cause serious injury to someone of her mass and bone density. Perhaps we should." 2.0, training officer. "I want to see her limits." The gravity increased again. This was it. This was where the human would finally break, would finally show the weakness that her species was known for. 2.0 was beyond what most species could even survive, let alone fight in. The Vrexian collapsed immediately, his body simply giving up. Medical drones swarmed the field, extracting fallen recruits with efficient precision. And Kira Torres, this impossible, infuriating human, dropped to one knee. Finally she was showing strain. Her breathing was labored, visible even from this distance. Sweat poured down her face. Her muscles trembled with exhaustion, but she did not call for extraction. She did not signal for medical assistance. Instead, she put one hand on the ground, braced herself, and pushed back to standing. It took her maybe 10 seconds that looked like they cost her everything, but she stood. Then she looked directly at the observation deck, directly at me, and she gave a thumbs up. A human gesture I had learned meant approval or success. The audacity, the absolute unmitigated audacity of this creature. "Turn it off," I said quietly. "General, turn off the gravity plating." Exercise concluded. "Get them all to medical for evaluation." I set down my datapad before I accidentally crushed it, and schedule Lieutenant Torres for my office in 2 hours. I want answers. As the gravity returned to normal and medical teams flooded the yard, I stood there trying to reconcile what I had just witnessed with everything I knew about human limitations. By all accounts, by every piece of data in the galactic database, what I had just seen should not have been possible. Humans were weak, soft, poorly adapted for combat. So why was this one still standing? And more importantly, why was she smiling about it? 3 days, I had said. She would last 3 days maximum. It had been one morning, and she had already made me look like a fool. One morning, and my understanding of human capability was crumbling like poorly mixed concrete. I hated being wrong. I really, truly hated it. But I was starting to suspect that Lieutenant Kira Torres was going to teach me a very uncomfortable lesson about assumptions, and knowing my luck, she was going to enjoy every second of it. The afternoon brought what I considered the real test. The morning's gravity exercise had been admittedly more successful for the human than I had predicted. Fine. Some species had unexpected advantages. Perhaps humans had denser muscle tissue than documented. Or maybe Torres was simply an exceptional specimen. Statistical outliers existed in every population, but the environmental endurance chamber, that was different. That tested not just physical capability, but mental resilience, adaptability, and the will to survive when every instinct screamed at you to quit. I had designed this exercise myself after witnessing too many recruits freeze in actual combat situations because they had never experienced true environmental hostility. The chamber could simulate any planetary condition in the known galaxy. Toxic atmospheres, temperature extremes, radiation exposure, pressure variations, all controlled and monitored, but very, very real. Today's scenario was one of my favorites, a Class 7 hostile environment, combining sub-zero temperatures, thin atmosphere, and irregular gravity fluctuations, 60 minutes of survival. No assistance, no equipment beyond basic environmental suits, just you and your ability to adapt. 4 recruits remained capable after the morning session. The Corthan brothers, the Vrexian who I had learned was named Drakos, and of course, the human. The others were in medical, recovering from various degrees of exhaustion and gravity-related injuries. Velthus, the Zelthorian, had actually apologized to me for failing. I had told her there was no shame in recognizing your limits. Wisdom, I had said, was knowing when to retreat. I was about to see if the human possessed any wisdom whatsoever. Chamber parameters are set, Thorol confirmed, checking the readouts one final time. Temperature will start at -40 degrees standard and drop to -70. Oxygen concentration at 60% normal. Gravity will fluctuate between 0.8 and 1.4 in random intervals. Perfect. I activated the communication system. Recruits, you have 60 minutes to survive and complete the objective. The objective is simple. Reach the beacon at the center of the chamber and activate it. The environment will actively try to kill you. Your suit will keep you alive, but it will not make you comfortable. Pain is part of the experience. Learn from it. Begin. The chamber doors sealed with a hiss that always reminded me of a predator's final breath before striking. I watched the monitors as the temperature plummeted and the atmosphere thinned. The recruits' vital signs displayed on individual screens: heart rates, oxygen saturation, core temperature, stress hormones. It was like watching a medical experiment, except the subjects had volunteered and were being paid for the privilege of suffering. The Corthan brothers moved together immediately, using their natural resistance to cold as an advantage. Their homeworld averaged -20 on a warm day. They would be uncomfortable but functional. Drakos, the Vrexian, was struggling already. His species evolved in tropical environments. Cold was their natural enemy. I watched his core temperature dropping faster than recommended, his movements becoming sluggish. And Kira? Her vitals were elevated but stable. Heart rate up, breathing faster to compensate for the thin air, but nothing approaching dangerous levels. She was moving steadily toward the beacon, her path more efficient than the others. While the Corthan brothers were forcing their way through with brute strength, she was reading the terrain, finding the easiest routes, conserving energy. She is adapting faster than the others, Thorol observed. Luck, I said, but even I did not believe it anymore. 20 minutes in, the first crisis occurred. Drakos went down. The cold had sapped his strength, his massive body now a liability, as it demanded more heat than his suit could provide. He was conscious, but immobile, his vitals dropping into the yellow zone. Protocol dictated we extract him immediately. I reached for the emergency retrieval button. Then I saw the human change direction. What is she doing? I leaned closer to the monitor. The beacon is north. She is heading east. Toward Drakos. Perhaps she is disoriented, Thorol suggested. But no, her path was too deliberate. She knew exactly where she was going. Within 3 minutes she had reached the fallen Vrexian. I watched, absolutely baffled, as she knelt beside him, checked his suit systems, then began physically dragging him toward an outcropping that would provide shelter from the worst of the artificial wind. This is a solo exercise, I said to no one in particular. There is no bonus for helping other recruits. In fact, it wastes time and energy she will need for herself. Kira got Drakos behind the outcropping, then did something I had never seen before in all my years running this facility. She opened her own suit's thermal regulator and redirected heat toward the Vrexian. Her core temperature immediately began dropping, her suit's warning systems flashing alerts. She was sacrificing her own safety for someone who, by all competitive logic, was already out of the exercise. "Extract them both," I ordered. "She is going to get herself killed." "Wait, General." Thurl pointed at another screen. "Look." Kira had only kept her thermal regulator open for 90 seconds, just long enough to stabilize Drakas, to bring his core temperature back to survivable levels. Then she sealed her suit again, gave the Vrexian what looked like an encouraging pat on the shoulder, and headed back toward the beacon. Her own temperature was dangerously low now, her movement slower, but she was still moving. The Corthan brothers reached the beacon first. No surprise there. They activated it and immediately signaled for extraction. Their objective complete. Smart, efficient, exactly what trained soldiers should do. Kira reached the beacon 7 minutes later. Her vitals were flashing warnings across every monitor. Core temperature at 34 degrees. Oxygen saturation at 82%. Stress hormones off the charts. She was, by every medical standard, approaching the limits of human endurance. She activated the beacon. Then instead of signaling for extraction, she turned around and started back toward Draco's. Absolutely not. I hit the emergency extraction override. Get her out of there now. She has completed the objective. This is stupidity, not courage. The extraction drones deployed, but Kira was already halfway back to the Vrexian. She reached him just as the drones arrived, helped him to his feet, supported his weight as they walked together toward the extraction point. They emerged from the chamber together, both of them shaking from cold, both of them looking like they had fought a war, and both of them were grinning like idiots. I met them in the decontamination area, my patience completely exhausted. "Lieutenant Torres, what part of solo exercise did you not understand?" She stripped off her gloves, her fingers blue from cold. "The part where I let someone die when I could prevent it, sir." "Drakas was not dying. We would have extracted him. But I was there first." She looked at me with those calm, infuriating eyes. "On Earth we have a saying, leave no one behind. It is not just for combat. It is for everything. This is not Earth, Lieutenant. This is Thuros Prime. Here we train individuals to survive impossible conditions. Wasting resources on failed teammates is not part of the curriculum." "Then maybe the curriculum is wrong, sir." The silence that followed could have crushed diamonds. Thorol made a noise like he was choking. Drakas, who was being wrapped in thermal blankets by medical personnel, stared at Kira like she had grown a second head. I should have disciplined her. I should have thrown her out of the program for insubordination. I should have done a lot of things. Instead, I heard myself asking, "How? Sir? How did you survive that? Your species is from a Class 3 world. Moderate temperatures. Breathable atmosphere. Standard gravity. You should have been the first one down, not the last one standing. Explain it to me because I am running out of rational explanations." Kira laughed. Actually laughed, standing there half-frozen and exhausted. "General, with respect, who told you Earth was a Class 3 world? The Galactic Council's planetary classification database. It has been standard reference material for 30 years. Right. The database compiled by scientists who visited our major cities, our controlled environments, our carefully curated first contact locations." She accepted a thermal blanket from a medic, wrapping it around her shoulders. "Did any of them visit the Australian outback in summer? The Siberian tundra in winter? The Amazon rainforest during monsoon season? Did they experience our hurricanes, our tornadoes, our earthquakes, our wildfires? Did they meet our spiders, our snakes, our bears, our sharks?" I felt something cold settle in my gut, and it had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. "What are you saying?" "I am saying, General, that Earth is not a Class 3 world. We just have really good marketing." She smiled that private joke smile again. "We are a death world, sir. We just did not want to scare anyone when we joined the galactic community. Bad for diplomacy, but every human alive has survived conditions that would kill most species before breakfast. We are adapted for it, built for it. We do not just survive hostile environments, General. We live in them. We thrive in them, and sometimes just for fun we vacation in them." The Corthan brothers had stopped to listen. Drakas was staring at Kira with what might have been awe or terror, possibly both. Thorol was furiously pulling up data on his pad, cross-referencing Earth's actual environmental conditions against the official classification. And I stood there, feeling every assumption I had made about humans crumbling into dust. A death world, I repeated slowly. Yes, sir. But we are polite about it. The final test of week 1 was always the strategic combat simulation. Not just physical endurance, not just environmental adaptation, but the ability to think tactically under pressure. Real warfare was not about who could punch hardest or run fastest. It was about who could outthink their opponent while everything around them was actively trying to end their existence. The simulation pit was a holographic combat arena that could generate any battlefield scenario in our extensive database. Today's scenario was a favorite of mine. Urban warfare, hostage extraction, 3 enemy combatants with superior positioning, and a 15-minute time limit before orbital bombardment made the entire area uninhabitable. I had seen recruits with decades of combat experience fail this simulation. It required aggression, caution, creativity, and split-second decision-making, often all at the same time. 4 recruits remained in competition. The Corthan brothers, now working as the efficient unit they were born to be. Dracos, who had recovered from his hypothermic episode and was determined to prove it had been a fluke, and Kira Torres, who had spent the past week systematically destroying every assumption I held about human limitations. I had stopped predicting her failure. It was bad for my blood pressure. Standard rules apply, I announced from the observation platform. Complete the objective, extract safely, minimize collateral damage. You will be graded on tactics, efficiency, and adaptability. Lethal force is authorized. The simulation enemies are intelligent and will respond to your actions. Treat this as real combat, because if you fail here, you will definitely fail when actual lives are at stake. Begin. The Corthan brothers went first, choosing the direct approach. Reaching charges on the main entrance, suppressive fire, aggressive room clearing. It was textbook military doctrine, executed with impressive precision. They completed the objective in 11 minutes with moderate collateral damage, solid performance. Exactly what I expected from their species. Dracos chose a more cautious route, using his size as an advantage. He absorbed enemy fire that would have incapacitated smaller species, slowly advancing until he could physically overpower the opposition. 13 minutes, heavy collateral damage, but the hostages survived. Acceptable, if inelegant. Then came the human's turn. I watched as Kira studied the holographic layout, her eyes tracking enemy positions, calculating angles and distances. She stood there for almost 2 full minutes, just thinking. The Corthan brothers shifted impatiently. Dracos muttered something about humans and their overthinking. I said nothing. I had learned that much at least. When Kira finally moved, it was nothing like what I expected. She did not breach the main entrance. She did not attempt a cautious advance. Instead, she went to the building's power distribution system, a detail most recruits never even noticed, and destroyed it. The entire simulation plunged into darkness. Night vision compromise. Thorol noted. The enemy combatants have superior optical equipment. Darkness should favor them, not her. But the human was not done. While the enemies adjusted to the darkness, she created a fire using debris and accelerant from a simulated fuel source. Not a small fire. A large, smoky, absolutely attention-grabbing fire at the building's western entrance. She is giving away her position, one of the Corthan brothers said, confused. The enemy combatants responded exactly as expected, converging on the fire, preparing to engage the threat, except the threat was not there. Kira had already moved, using the smoke as cover, entering through an eastern window that the enemies had now left completely unguarded. She reached the hostages in 4 minutes, had them moving in 5, and extracted through the same window in 7. The enemy combatants were still investigating the fire when the simulation ended. Mission complete, 0 casualties, minimal collateral damage, total time 8 minutes and 32 seconds. The absolute silence in the observation room was deafening. That was, Thorol began, then stopped, searching for words. That was not standard tactics. No, I agreed quietly. No, it was not. The Corthan brothers looked genuinely baffled. Dracos was staring at the replay, watching Kira's movements frame by frame like he was studying ancient religious texts. And I stood there, realizing that I had just witnessed something I had not seen in decades of military service. Not just competence, not just skill, but genuine tactical creativity. the kind that changed how battles were fought. I called them all to debriefing immediately. They assembled in front of me, tired, battered, but still standing. All of them. For the first time in 16 months, I had a full squad survive the entire first week without a single dropout or medical discharge. Acceptable performance, I said, because I was not about to start handing out excessive praise. You have survived week 1. This does not mean you will survive week 2. This does not mean you are soldiers. This means you have earned the right to continue training. Except you, Lieutenant Torres. Remain. The others filed out, the Corthan brothers clapping Kira on the shoulder as they passed. Dracos gave her a respectful nod, which from a Vrexian was basically a declaration of eternal friendship. Then it was just the human, Thoril, and me. I looked at her for a long moment. This small, unassuming creature from a world we had classified as harmless. I owe you an apology. Her eyebrows rose. Sir? I said humans do not last here. I was wrong. Not just wrong. Spectacularly, embarrassingly wrong. I gestured at the simulation replay, still running on the monitors. That fire tactic, where did you learn that? Sun Tzu. Actually. Ancient Earth military philosopher. He said all warfare is based on deception. She smiled. Also, my grandfather was a wildfire firefighter. He taught me that people instinctively move toward fires because they want to control them, so I gave them a fire to worry about while I did the actual job. Sun Tzu. I repeated. How ancient? About 2,500 years old, sir. I felt my head plates ache. Humans had been writing sophisticated military theory for 2.5 millennia, and we had dismissed them as peaceful diplomats. Lieutenant Torres, I have been running this facility for 43 years. I have trained over 6,000 recruits from 112 species. I thought I understood the capabilities and limitations of every warrior race in the galaxy. You have spent 1 week proving me wrong at every opportunity. I had good motivation, sir. You did promise me an apology if I survived the week. Her eyes sparkled with that constant underlying amusement. I am very good at collecting those, despite everything. Despite my pride and my decades of experience and my absolute certainty that I knew better. I laughed. Actually laughed. You are insufferable. I have heard that before, sir. I believe it. I pulled up her performance data, reviewing the numbers one more time. Superior adaptation, exceptional pain tolerance, creative tactical thinking, and apparently the stubbornness of a Krenthok defending its territory. Tell me honestly, Lieutenant, are all humans like you? Or are you an exceptional specimen that I should not use as a baseline for your species? She considered this carefully. I am pretty average, actually. Maybe a bit more stubborn than most, but that is a family trait, not a species trait. There are humans who could run circles around my performance here, special forces, endurance athletes, people who live in genuinely hostile regions and do it without environmental suits or support systems. She paused. We just do not advertise it much because, like I said, bad for diplomacy. Nobody wants to ally with the scary Death World species. Except now the secret is out. Is it though? She tilted her head. I mean, you could put it in your report. Human recruit exceeds all expectations, possibly from Death World environment, despite official classification. Or you could just grade me like you would any other recruit and let the galaxy keep underestimating us. Honestly, General, the element of surprise is a pretty significant tactical advantage. I stared at her. This human, this impossibly clever, infuriating, magnificent human, was suggesting we conspire to maintain her species' reputation for weakness. That is remarkably devious, Lieutenant. Thank you, sir. It was not a compliment. I am choosing to take it as one anyway. She smiled. So, do I pass week 1? You pass. I held out my hand, a human gesture I had learned meant respect and agreement. She shook it, her grip firm despite her smaller size. But Torres understands something. Week 1 was the easy part. It only gets harder from here. Good, she said simply. I did not come here for easy, General. I came here to prove that humans belong among the warriors of the galaxy. So bring on week 2. Bring on week 16. I will still be standing at the end. And watching her walk out of that debriefing room, shoulders back, head high, confidence radiating from every step, I believed her. For the first time since she arrived, I genuinely believed that she would make it. Not just survive, but excel, not just complete the program, but graduate at the top of her class. I turned to Thorol, who had been silently observing the entire exchange. Make a note in my personal log. Humans are not a Class 3 species. Classification requires immediate review. Also note that I am an idiot who should have done more research before making assumptions. The second part is already well documented, General. I glared at him, but there was no heat in it. Shut up, Thorol. Yes, sir. As I watched Kira disappear down the corridor, probably heading to the barracks to collapse into well-earned sleep, I thought about my opening words to her. Humans do not last here. She had proven me wrong in every possible way. Not just lasted, but thrived. Not just survived, but helped others survive. Not just completed the tasks, but redefined how they could be approached. The Corthan brothers had been right about one thing. Humans were different. They just had been wrong about what that difference meant. Humans were not weaker than other species. They were not less capable. They were simply adapted for different challenges. Challenges that turned out to be remarkably applicable to military training designed to break the strongest warriors the galaxy had to offer. Earth was not a safe world. Earth was a death world hiding in diplomatic clothing. And humans were not fragile diplomats playing at being soldiers. They were survivors from a planet that had spent millions of years trying to kill them, and they had won that fight so thoroughly that they made it look easy. I had 347 species worth of experience. Kira Torres in 1 week had taught me that experience meant nothing if it was built on false assumptions. And somehow, despite the embarrassment, despite the complete destruction of my worldview, despite everything, I found myself looking forward to week 2. Because if week 1 had taught me anything, it was that humans were full of surprises. Terrifying, brilliant, absolutely infuriating surprises. 3 days. I had predicted maximum. I was never going to live that down. Thorol would probably have it engraved on my retirement plaque. General Krevoth, who thought humans were weak and was proven catastrophically wrong by a soldier who weighed less than his armor. Worth it, though. Absolutely worth it. Because now I knew the truth. Humans did not just last here. They excelled here. And the galaxy was going to have to recalibrate everything it thought it knew about the species from that deceptively peaceful blue and green planet. Starting with me. Starting today. Starting with the admission that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe sends you exactly the lesson you need in exactly the package you least expect. Even if that package is 5'6", 130 pounds, and comes with the most insufferable smile in the known galaxy.